Trader Joe?
In the description.
Oh, no. Well, then I also read Leah, they did like a head. Have they published anything else? I just think that's. Good. Maybe it's still like
It takes from your paycheck.
Don't give them ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Kenny and I are the same age.
Yeah, she's not, you are.
Same also.
I wonder, actually, I kind of wonder if that pass lost it. What do you know about when Kate Brown, when Kate Brown's portrait?
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I have no idea. It's probably one of those things that's being moved.
Well, I've never seen one. That's the thing, like, I don't know the process for.
Yeah, do they get while they're still governor, or is it after they leave office?
Well, and it feels like everyone gets like,
Oh, it'd be like-
it's like way different and that's kind of boring. And like, obviously, McCall's insane.
Yeah.
Look over there.
Is this the naughty room? That's the best one. That's all I got.
I'm not great.
That's the thing, she didn't tell you when she was there. She was,
Or does he want to sit here?
I mean,
That might be a good idea.
Would you mind sitting where you're sitting? What? Do you mind sitting where
This way it'll really make it work.
Sorry again. No, we're gonna start charging. Yeah,
Thank you.
This is now a toll bridge.
Yeah, right.
I just need you to make sure to sit back. So
Okay, does this work?
yeah.
Okay.
And I know a lot of folks in the room have been through this before, but just to reiterate, just a little ground rules since we're running a little bit behind. I will be kind of calling on folks. I'm going to go through each publication once, and then we'll go through again just so that everyone has an opportunity to ask a question. We'll be alternating between in-person and virtual. Okay, and Kevin will be taking virtual questions.
So $30 to get extra questions in?
Of course. But to us personally.
The rate's up to 50.
And did you get your
What?
Did you get your questions?
Yeah. Well, in the email?
Oh, she just texted.
Oh, can you?
I'm gonna text this to you.
Okay.
They're all
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Ooh, wow, got some mics. Okay.
Great. We're going to go through the ground rules as we typically are, or as we typically do. So I think whenever you're ready.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. How's your session going? Oh, you old. I'm so sorry. I know. Feels that way. We're almost done. Almost done. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to have a few minutes with you today. I'll make some opening remarks and then we'll do Q&A. So I think you probably saw my announcement today about the, make sure I got the total title right, Early Childhood Care and Learning System Roundtable. That's really, actually, the title is important because it's about care, it's about learning, it's about systems, and that's why there's so much in that title. I have been talking to a lot of folks around the state, families, businesses. I have advisory committees through our regional solutions group that have been talking to communities about what they need. Childcare, preschool, early learning comes up time and time again. And if you recall back at the business summit in December, I mentioned that we would be moving forward out of my office a conversation that gets us to where other states are getting right now ahead of us, which is to access to affordable childcare, particularly for 0 to 2, and universal preschool across our state. That's not gonna happen overnight. We have to put the right people in the room, figuring out how we can get there, and how we can also pay for that. So it's gonna be done in phasing, looking at what we do now, making sure it's better aligned, looking at how we serve our 0 to 2 children and their families better, and how we get to universal preschool across the state. So the roundtable itself will start meeting here in a couple weeks. Both state experts, national experts, our co-chairs are one, really one an Oregon expert as well as a national expert who's worked out in New Mexico, and we can get you, I think the names are in the release, and then we'll be posting the whole roundtable as well. This is a conversation we need to have in the state. How do we support our working families? How do we support our economy by making sure parents have affordable early learning and care so they can go to work and support their kids, and at the end of the day, also what's best for our children. Because when they have high quality care, when they're young and their brains are still developing, they're going to be better prepared when they enter kindergarten and have a much brighter trajectory for their lives. And that's what we want to see here in Lincoln. That gets me to my next point, which is about long-term prosperity. And this piece is how we help our working families and their kids with childcare and preschool that they can afford is part of our long-term prosperity. So as you know, the Prosperity Council has had at least 2 meetings now, and they are moving forward on getting me recommendations here in a couple months on the prosperity roadmap. But part of that is one of my legislative concepts for the session, House Bill 4084. Just to remind everyone, that includes fast-track permitting to make sure large projects can get in the queue faster, to have expedited service, so when people are willing to invest large sums of money in the state, they have certainty to get through a regulatory process. I'm also asking the legislature for $40 million in one-time dollars for industrial site readiness, so we can make sure we have land that is ready for development. That's a start. I would like to see more, but I would at least like the legislature to do the $40 million. That bill currently sits in Ways and Means. So just want to remind everyone, we've had strong bipartisan votes out of both policy committees, and now the bill is down in Ways and Means. There's also other items in there. I want to just speak briefly about the enterprise zones, because there's been a little confusion there. Enterprise zones are a local tool. We have them on the books. And what my bill does is make some adjustments to the current enterprise zone law to allow more flexibility and eligibility and how it can be used locally. And we can come back to that a little bit, but I think there's some misinterpretation. It is, wants to be a tool for comprehensive use across all parts of the state if local governments decide to use the expansion on enterprise zones. And that is not a given, but it's a tool that local communities say they would like more flexibility. Transportation, as you know, has been a big topic for the session. I want to start off by saying, and I think it hasn't been reported on yet, but before the session started, I sat down with legislative leaders and I said, we need to solve the budget hole for the Oregon Department of Transportation. What we now have is a compromise that will show up in the final session budget bill that talks about how we maintain basic services in ODOT. Tough choices were made to get to our compromise, and no one loves the proposal, but it will make sure that the agency can function through the end of the biennium and past the end of the biennium to provide basic services, plowing the roads, operating the DMVs, things like that. The way the $300 million budget hole has been addressed is taking additional vacancies, which will have impact on the agency. We're not laying folks off, but there will be additional vacancies that will be taken to meet the budget hole. And that will, over time affect the efficiency of the agency. But we want to take some more vacancies, and we're taking dollars from other projects that have not yet begun in programs that mean a lot to folks around the state. But this is how you have to fill that budget hole. So those details, I believe, were outlined in the Transportation Economic Development Subcommittee of Ways and Means a week or so ago. So that is the compromise that will meet the budget hole for ODOT. And then regarding the referendum and the election date, legislators have been very clear. They want to put the measure before voters as soon as possible, and that's why they are moving to rededicate to the May ballot. Because we need to have a decision on that from voters, so we can move on to our next conversation around funding transportation here in the state. That seems like a good segue to the budget. When we came into session, everyone, as you know, the budget is a big concern. For me, I've had three main principles in mind. Are we gonna protect our services as best we can, given the impact of the Trump tax cuts on our budget? So how do we protect services? How do we protect progress on the things that we've been working on? Housing, homelessness, making sure we have more mental health and addiction treatment. Those were priorities for me to see protected. And how do we stabilize the budget picture right now? Because what the Trump administration has done to our budget, which was balanced last year, is no longer balanced. So how do we, protect one-time investments that are important? And for example, making sure we can invest in industrial site readiness to get more good-paying jobs created here in the state of Oregon. Right now in the budget process, I think it is, as you know, the session was started, legislators asked the executive branch to give them reduction lists that they could look at to balance the budget. My understanding today is that those reduction lists at 2.5% and 5% will not have to be utilized. There might be a few things off those lists, but in general, the level of cuts do not have to be that deep, because after the revenue forecast, there was an improvement in the revenue that could be used to pay for state services. I am anticipating about a 1% reduction in overall state expenditures from the work of the Ways and Means Committee. That 1% overall reduction, that should not affect basic services and basic direct services right now. That coupled with the disconnect bill, the bill that is moving through the legislature to decouple the state of Oregon from some of the budget or some of the tax cuts by the Trump administration. That bill's moving through, and I believe that's about over $300 million. The 1% reductions and the $300 million will allow the state not to hurt services, and it will allow us, more importantly with the disconnect, not to make any further reductions for K-12, universities, and community colleges. The only way the legislature is planning right now to maintain funding for our schools and our universities and community colleges is because of the disconnect bill. I know there are challenges around it, there are concerns around it. It is a modest approach to find the revenue to fund our schools, which is a prosperity issue, which is a livability issue. And I have to remind people, we have districts right now who are making reductions. This would keep the state's commitment level through the rest of the biennium with the disconnect. So we're not taking any state dollars away from our schools, community colleges, and universities right now. Let's see. I think the last thing I want to say is on one of the other economic development bills for the session is the modernization of the MODA Center related to Portland Trailblazers. There's been a lot of good work between the state, the city, and Multnomah County to reach an agreement on a framework. I believe there's some final amendments that are coming on that bill, but I anticipate that will be moving through both chambers before the end of the session. So I think that is good for the state, good for the city, and certainly good for folks who are big fans of the Portland Trailblazers. So with that, happy to take some questions.
Great. And as usual, please state your name and publication before you ask your question. Lisa.
Lisa Bailey from Coin. Governor, education folks have been down here day after day looking for more money. Not just no cuts, but more money. Is there going to be any more money for them?
Right now, I think where the legislature has landed is that let's make sure we can maintain the budgets that were passed last year. And we also know it's a difficult time for some of our school districts who are facing cuts. I don't anticipate additional dollars outside the current budget for our schools and universities and communities.
So you won't tap into reserve?
Right now, the legislature is not taking up any reserves.
Virtual?
Yeah, we've got 2 questions from Joanna from Willamette Week. The first is, I'm wondering if the governor has any indication at this point as to whether or not a statewide universal preschool program would involve means testing and what that might look like.
Well, that is getting ahead of us. So this roundtable just got announced today, and they will be giving me recommendations to look at our current programs from Oregon Pre-K, Head Start, Preschool Promise. We have some great programs in the state. They have to all work better together to serve our families now within the resources we have. Where we move forward as a state will be up to this group to make recommendations. The reason I combine state and national experts on this issue is we want to do it right. How do you create a program that is sustainable, that will work for the entire state, not only for our 0 to 2s, but also for our preschool kiddos? And I have a lot of confidence in the folks who are on this group that they will provide a set of recommendations with some ideas of how to fund it, so we, over the next couple of years, we will actually be able to implement it.
Michaela Armstrong, Channel 12. Governor, what kind of message do you think it sends to voters about moving the transportation tax vote to May, especially for those who signed a petition demanding that the matter be decided for the November general election?
Well, the matter will go before voters. And right now, the legislature is working and looking at the May ballot. Every registered voter will get a ballot. There will be robust conversation about it. And that is what the decision from the legislature is coming forward. I think that will put it before the voters, which is, I think, what people wanted, and we'll have a decision sooner, so we know what that means for transportation funding going forward.
Virtual? Okay.
Yeah, this is from Holly Delamuth at Ashland News. What are your thoughts on HB 4124, and can you update folks in Southern Oregon on talks with Southern Oregon University about a potential funding package to help keep the university solvent? What kind of progress has been made to that end?
So I think House Bill 4124.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Representative Marsh's bill that came in before we knew there were some concerns with Southern Oregon University. That bill respects universities who are independent institutions and requires the Higher Education Coordinating Commission to look at different ways that the state can be a partner with our universities to help them be sustainable into the future, whether that's combining services or whatever kind of administrative savings the state could help the universities have. I think that bill has come about because this is a very difficult time for higher education across the country. We've seen every state in this country looking at their systems, looking at what's sustainable. We've seen lower enrollment, and that means these institutions have to consider whether or not they can be sustainable into the future. So I think that bill is a modest approach to address that question. When it comes to Southern Oregon University, SOU is an important institution for our state and for the southern region of our state. And they are challenged at the moment with the fiscal crisis around being able to manage where they are with their enrollment. I'm very aware of that. We are monitoring that. There's a conversation right now with legislators to how to help them through this, over this bump fiscally. And it's going to require the university to really look at what they're doing and what the future holds for them and what that university will look like 5, 10 years, 15 years down the line. Again, this is higher education across the country. Everyone is grappling with these issues.
Dirk?
Can I follow up on just a couple of things you opened with? With your economic development bill, I mean, I think the criticism you're hearing is that you're opening up EZs. EZs could be used by data centers that don't employ a lot of people and use a lot of resources. I understand that these are local decisions. Is that a concern that you have, though? I mean, have you looked at altering the code or making this a little more fine-tuned so they are not using these?
Thank you for the question. So on enterprise zones themselves, we know that that's a good local tool for folks who want to help businesses who need a little bit of support from the tax system. And some flexibility. One of the things that is important to me is not just about how many jobs are being created, but how many jobs right now are being retained, and are we seeing wage growth in the enterprise zone? So in my bill it says, what are some other things that local government could be considering when they allow for enterprise zones to be applied? And I am also concerned about data centers. That's why I created the Data Center Advisory Committee to look at all of the impacts for these data center facilities across the state, whether or not they're in an enterprise zone or not. Because some are not. Here's the situation. Those facilities have impact on energy use, water use, what it means for resources in the communities. So the advisory committee that I have set up will be giving me recommendations by, I believe, early fall to address all those things together. And I think they have to also look at the incentives that facilitate some of the creation of these data centers. But we as a state need to have a statewide conversation about that. I'm not ready at this point to say what that should look like. That's why I put this advisory committee together. But the enterprise zone piece in my bill does not create more data centers. That is up to local government. But I will be cautioning our local governments not to do anything until we have further recommendations from my data.
Okay, and just real quick, can I just very quickly, because I know I want another bite. You mentioned transportation and that it hadn't been reported on. I mean, to my understanding, there was a hearing that said, here's a suite of options. This agreement you're talking about has not been made public at all, and I would very much welcome you guys to let us know what it is, because I think to me, it's felt like hiding the ball. We're gonna shove this thing in the session budget bill. Good luck figuring it out, and by the time you do, this thing is gonna be out of the barn.
Well, since the beginning of session, there has been bipartisan agreement that we need to solve the budget hole for ODOT. Yes, there are other dynamics around transportation floating around. But when I started to have meetings in this very room with both the Republican leaders and the presiding officers, I said, we gotta solve this. And it meant, according to the co-chairs, it could only be done within the ODOT budget. Mm-hmm. And that meant trade-offs, taking more vacancies and taking dollars from other pots of money to pay for these things. That means other things don't get done that are also important to communities. So that list that you saw in the committee, from my understanding, was generally where the resolution of that conversation landed. So we can
Yeah, we just don't know.
Dirk, thanks for being here. Let's go virtual. Thanks. Dirk, thank you.
I'm sorry, what was that, Dirk?
We just don't know what pots of money have been reduced by what. So say Francisco, we don't know how much you guys are cutting there. It's clear that we know the universe that you're looking at. We just don't know what the agreement is. So there's a committee.
And what I would say is, I think there's a lot going on in session, so I wouldn't say anyone's trying to hide the ball. I think everyone's just been busy. I know there's been a lot of briefings, but that's why I was bringing it up, because I feel like people don't understand that there is a solution there. It's been agreed to, and it means money out of the house, some of the projects that were approved in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Safe routes to schools, Connect Oregon, all those pots of money, plus the vacancies.
Right.
And to be clear though, these are things that have not begun, like money it's not taking money away from things that have started, it's saying certain things will not start because these dollars have to be reassigned for operations and maintenance of these.
Thank you for that.
But I agree, we'll get you more information.
We've got from Molly O'Brien at the Herald News. In Klamath County, there is a stretch of Highway 97 that is known for its high volume of motor vehicle crashes, many of which result in fatalities. In meeting recently with members of a local commission formed to address this matter, what were some of the ideas discussed that might improve the safety of this corridor for drivers?
Well, I do know that there are a variety of safety issues on Highway 97. I'm not familiar with that particular meeting. I was not in that meeting, but issues were raised by some county commissioners about this is important, so I know there's some work going on. I am working with our federal delegation to ask for some federal funding for some safety issues in that 97 corridor, and we can get some information to the folks about that.
You said earlier that legislators have been very clear that they want to move the referendum up to May, but have they? I mean, only 3 Democratic senators spoke out on the Senate floor for that bill, and there was reporting from OPB and others that there was some hesitancy from some Democrats. So I guess I'm just asking, if lawmakers have been on board, why didn't this pass on Friday?
I would just say there's been a lot going on in session. I mean, as you know, here we are, I don't even know what week this is. There's just a lot going on, but I know there is a commitment to get to the ballot as soon as possible so voters, Oregonians can make their voice heard, and we can move to whatever that resolution is to the next transportation funding.
And is there any pressure from your office towards Democrats to move it up at all?
Not, I would say I agree that we need to have a decision on this, and so we saw it move out of the Senate, and I assume the House will take it up, I assume this week.
Virtual?
Franny with KVAL. Republicans claim that moving the referendum to May will disenfranchise voters since fewer voters will vote in May. Are you concerned about such a big package to go out to a smaller subset of voters?
We make it very easy to vote in the state of Oregon. If you're a registered voter, a ballot is gonna end up in your home. That is not disenfranchising anyone. It will require everyone to pay attention when their ballot comes in, and I think there are a lot of local measures. People are gonna be voting on other things in May. The important thing is everybody's gonna get a chance to vote on it, and the sooner we have that decision, the sooner we can move forward on other conversations around transportation.
Hi, Governor, Mia with the Oregon Capital Chronicle. You mentioned bipartisanship when it comes to transportation. Yesterday on the floor, Senator Starr said that we wouldn't be in this situation if lawmakers last year just worked with Republicans on a transportation package. Do you agree with that? Looking back on this year, it's been an extremely difficult year for transportation. It passed last year's session. We needed a special session to happen. Now there's a referendum possibly going to happen this next election. So what lessons have you learned from this experience? Would you have done things differently?
Well, it has been quite a journey. I think what I have seen is a topic that traditionally has been a nonpartisan topic is now become very divisive, and that's very unfortunate. You know, when you talk to business leaders, they understand the value of a funded and maintained transportation system. We all benefit from that. It is really hard to watch how this topic has become so divisive when we really do all agree that your DMV should be open, the road should be plowed, things should be paved. These are really basic things. What I have been focused on is how do we find a solution today? As I've been mentioning, we have a solution on the ODOT budget hole, so we can keep people working, doing what they need to do. That does not solve our long-term challenge here in the state. And I know let's be honest, there were a lot of hard feelings from what happened last year and how it didn't work out. I have to be focused right now on how do we solve the budget hole for ODOT, and how do we restart the conversation to say, okay, Oregon, what do you want to see happen as it relates to transportation? Because we all agree that we need our roads, we need our bridges, and we have to figure out how to fund it. And that's why I think having a vote in May, as legislative leaders have asked for, will resolve that issue from last year, and we can all move on to the next conversation.
We've got a question from Alex Baumhart from the Oregon Capital Chronicle. It's about HB 4084. Why try to pass a bill that would spur data center development in the state when your advisory committee hasn't met yet? If they recommend in 2027 that you rescind the expanded enterprise zone benefits for data centers that you are trying to pass right now in House Bill 4084, will you? And most importantly, why will you not exempt data centers and crypto mining facilities from the expanded enterprise zone benefits under HB 4084 as requested by Tax Fairness Oregon?
Well, I just want to say again, House Bill 4084, when it comes to the enterprise zone flexibility that's in there, is not about data centers. It's about local government having some flexibility to the decisions they want to make. I don't believe we are going to see any new data centers because of that enterprise zone flexibility. In fact, what we've been hearing from local government is these are small manufacturers, they need to have some more certainty. And it's not just about how many jobs are created, it's how many jobs are retained and what kind of wage growth can you see in the businesses and enterprise zones. Local government is supportive of this. There will be time, once the data center advisory committee recommendations are out, that we will be able to, I think, completely understand what we want to do as a state to manage for data center growth in the state. Because there are some businesses who will need them, but freestanding data centers, the way we've been growing in the state, is not sustainable. So the data center advisory committee is supposed to give me those recommendations and say, where do we go next here? I don't think it's a one thing or the other. The enterprise zone piece in 4084 is a necessary tool right now for other businesses. And I would urge folks to watch the data center advisory committee's work. I think they have their first meeting on Friday. And they're gonna be taking up all those issues. There will be an opportunity for people to weigh in to how we do this statewide in a strategic fashion that lifts up all communities.
Capital Chronicle going with the Dirk method, get two bites of the apple there. Let's go, Anastasia.
Governor, Anastasia Mixer with the Statesman Journal. Republicans have walked out over 1599, and it doesn't seem likely that it's going to be passed before the deadline, including the Secretary of State's guidance. Will you continue to support the bill if it means limiting the 10-day timeline for public participation? And are you concerned that the bill's unpopularity might follow you to the ballot?
Well, I would say is the Secretary of State is in charge of determining when the bill is done and whether or not it can be operationalized. So that is a question for him. I'm encouraging legislators to get it done as soon as they can. And I would also say that legislators need to show up for their jobs. And right now, when people walk off the job, I don't think anyone really thinks that's a good idea. My expectation is people show up. So I would just encourage people to just keep showing up on the floor, do their job, and finish the session as soon as they possibly can. And I am focused on what we can do to make sure that we have transportation funded. I live in the moment, I live in the day, I'm working on it right now. I just want to make sure we have a node out that functions and that we can get on to the next conversation on transportation.
And last question to Carlos Fittis.
So regarding campaign finance, regardless of like the technical details, you basically have the good government advocates over here saying that it's full of loopholes. Then you have the House Speaker, the Secretary of State's office, and unions and business advocates all saying that's not true. Do you support a bill with all this uncertainty? Like lawmakers don't even seem to know what this bill actually does.
Well, I do think they need to educate themselves and figure out what it does do. I have also seen the side-by-sides of what it does and what it doesn't do. I'm still trying to understand that myself. I have said that I support campaign contribution limits, and they have to be implemented. My understanding is some version of this bill is necessary for the Secretary of State to actually have contribution limits next year in place. And I think that's something we have to focus on. So it'll be interesting to see if any amendments are made before the end of session, before it gets to this.
Would you support the current bill though, if that's what?
I can't speak to that right now,
Okay.
because I don't totally understand all the changes.
Great. Thanks everyone for your time.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you,
Governor.
everyone.
So I don't think I missed anything. There was one hearing about